Good day, everybody. Today, I have the pleasure of introducing you to Edie DeValvis of Shape Good Habits. I'm excited for having her here today because this is an area that I know a little about, but not a lot. So, Edie, if you would, I have some questions I just want to ask you, and you can help me to understand better and also have my audience understand better about the work that you do. So if you would, just tell me, where did your work begin? How did it start? Where did you come from?
Out of the blue. It started a long time ago. I worked in 911 for a number of years. You know, I always wondered what it was like to be that person, you know, the person that nobody wanted to work with. And one day I found out for myself. I got into the 911 center and my team was working and they were laughing and talking. And when I came in and said, "Hi there," they suddenly looked down and suddenly got very busy on their computers and no one answered me. And I had to stop by to drop some things off on my way to a meeting, but I was so embarrassed. My stomach sank. And then I thought, that was so rude. Who do they think they are? And it really bothered me. And a couple of days later, I realized I had a run-in with two of my kids. And I walked away feeling the same way, embarrassed, and then blaming them. Rude. Who do they think they are? Well, a few days later, an old friend of mine that I trust implicitly and I were having coffee together, and I was whining about it. And she said, what do these two incidents have in common? I said, well, the people in my life are rude. She just looked at me. And I said, oh, okay, I guess I'm the common denominator. She's a really good friend.
Right.
She said, Edie, it took us 3 weeks to be able to get scheduled to have coffee together. You missed calling me back at least twice. You forgot to call me back. You're running all the time. You're in this business that is so stressful. I really think you need help. And so I got help. I went to a counselor and she named it for me. She's called it compassion fatigue. She said it's the result of constantly dealing with other people's pain. And I said, well, can I get better? And she said, oh, absolutely. And I said, well, what will help? And she said, well, therapy. But also you need to eat right. You need to get plenty of rest. You need to exercise. You need to have a solid mental health and spiritual health practice. I said, well, therapy I can do. The rest of it, not so much. My life is too busy. I've got 3 kids at home. I have full-time work that really takes 50 to 60 hours a week. How am I supposed to add any of these things into my life? And she said, I'm confident that you'll figure this out. Well, I did. It took me about 20 years, though. So I would start a new program and drop it and, go and join a gym and work out and get sore and not go back. All the little things that you try, and I just couldn't seem to get it right. I finally left the field of 911 and went to school and became a therapist and worked with people who have addictions, and found myself in the same position again, where my life was getting unmanageable and I was overstressed and just not handling things. Went back to therapy. And then I went on to become a pastor and became a chaplain. And then I found myself there again. And over those years of struggling with high stress occupations, I gained 5 to 7 pounds a year. Do that for 20 years. I was over 200 pounds. I'm only 5'4". And not in very good physical shape. And my health was deteriorating. I ended up with an autoimmune condition. And so I worked at it and I learned more. And so I have a strategy now. And over the past 3 years, I have dropped 85 pounds. I am more fit and more lively and more vibrant and better centered than I have been in decades. And because of the strategy that I've developed, what was taking me over 20 years took me a tenth of that time. And I want to help people. I want to help people, other people, to experience that compression of time that it takes. It's not simple or easy. It is simple. It's not easy. And it's not quick. But it is effective.
Is it due to your own experiences, or have you seen other people too that you want to help people with their habits? What have you seen with outside of yourself that you feel?
Okay, so in the chaplaincy, I worked with the program that I worked with serves adolescents. It's a residential program for adolescents who have mental health and behavioral health problems. And the direct care staff, the people who work with the youth every day, 8 hours a day, they're with young people who are delightful and charming and wonderful and unpredictable and sometimes flat scary. And so they have this occupation that is stressful in a lot of ways as 911. Each occupation has its own individual stressors, but the unpredictability of the workflow, the not being able to take breaks, the assault to our spirit through having people treat us badly. These are things that wear us down. And I could see that in my staff. So I developed a program with my staff to help them establish, and I start with something so simple and so easy. I start with teaching people to sit in silence for 5 minutes a day. Just sit and listen to yourself breathe for 5 minutes a day, but be intentional about it. Intentional silence. But part of the key is connection. So I set it up where they had someone else and they texted back and forth whether or not they had taken the time to love themselves that way each day. And that connection plus the habit has made a profound difference in some lives. And so I know that this works for other people, not just me.
Mm-hmm. So one of the things you talked about was breathing. So I've just been introduced to you. Can you tell me how you would start off a conversation or a meeting with me to get me a little bit more under control?
More under control?
That I would bring myself more under control, that I can take a little bit more control. Could you start talking about breathing?
Okay. And so the breathing practice is simple. It's sitting still and just listening to yourself breathe. So when you inhale, you count it as 1. When you exhale, you count it as 2. And go back to 1 and 2. And if you just focus on breathing, set a timer for 5 minutes. Or if you don't think you can sit still for 5 minutes, set a timer for 2. Just take that time and recognize it as a an act of self-care, something that you do to love yourself. And when we establish this habit, when we start doing this every day, it changes something in us. I liken it to margin, and in grade school we learned about keeping a margin on each side of your paper so that you have this white space. And so it's margin in our lives to be able to just sit and be with that inner piece of us that is connected to that which is beyond, connected to the universal principle of love. It's a way of loving ourselves. And so I don't know that I could make a huge difference for you in a moment, but working with me over time can help you with that self-love. And that's the first key to everything. We've got to love ourselves into health.
Right. So when someone comes in, or if I were to come in and I wanted to, excuse me, do something different, and I say, do you start with breathing? What is the first thing that you suggest?
Okay, so my motto is start now, start small, start with one, and stay connected. Start now. If you don't have something already in mind, I do not want you to spend one more minute deciding what to do. I want you to start with the breathing. If you already have something in mind and you have something that you want to start, I'm going to help you find the smallest piece of that to start with, because it needs to be so small and so doable and so simple that you don't have any excuse. You don't have that not enough time or I don't know how excuses. And so what kind of thing would you want to start with, Steve? What do you want to do?
I want to start with accountability.
Accountability. And so tell me more about accountability. What do you mean by that?
I want to make sure that if I'm saying that I'm going to do something, that I'm going to start something, that I don't put something in front of that and I don't even begin to begin.
Okay. Do you have an accountability partner? Somebody that you keep touch with, that you trust?
I don't at present.
Okay. So I'll be your accountability partner. So what's the smallest thing that you could do to be accountable in your imagination? Huh?
Start writing things down of what I want to accomplish for the day.
Okay. So making the list is what you want to be accountable for. Mm-hmm. Okay. So when you make your list on your cell phone, you have a cell phone, right?
Correct.
Okay. On your cell phone, on your text function, you have emojis. Now, one of the emojis is a green check mark. I really like the green check mark, but there are other emojis that you could use. So you choose the emoji that you want. Just one emoji. And when you have completed your list, you send that to me. And I'll send you back a heart on it, saying, yes, I saw it. That's how simple it can be. That releases dopamine in your system, and it makes you feel good about what you did. Now, one of the keys is you're going to let your accountability partner know when you didn't do it, because that tells your subconscious that this is important, and I'm going to be accountable to myself because it's important to me. So when you don't do it, I want you to select another emojis and send that one to me. Now, one of the ones that my people have sent to me is shaped like a pile of manure. And that works. But there are other emojis. There's frowny faces. There's lightning. And so you get to choose. But that tells your subconscious that this is important. Very simple. And you track it for as long as you, in my view, you set aside a certain amount of time. Now we start with a 5-day challenge. So we're only going to do it for 5 days. But then I have another program that goes longer, and it's 28 days. And so you start small. So I think a 5-day run is a small enough win for anybody. And then you start stretching it out. What happens when we do this small task is that it sets our subconscious to know that this is something important. And our subconscious will drive us to do it. When I started the 5 minutes a day, which was my starting place, it became 20 minutes a day very soon because it's that important. My next habit that I started was writing down what I'm going to eat tomorrow. And then my next habit was having 2 glasses of water when I wake up. These are tiny, tiny little habits. They're not any kind of big deal. But they started me on a path that, number one, I know that I can start a new habit and stick with it. And number two, I stick with it for long enough for it to have an effect. Because changing the way we eat, unless it's something drastic and unhealthy, is going to take time. It takes 12 weeks minimum for something to start showing up in our physiology when we're making a huge change. It's really hard to stick with an eating plan for 12 weeks. But sticking with it is where the secret is.
Right. And probably if you stop doing your habit, all of a sudden you may feel a little bit of an untoward effect when you're so used to doing it, like something's missing or,
Yes. Yes. And once, 40% of what we do every day is automatic.
That's right.
And so keeping the health habits automatic is the key to that. We just are going to take care of ourselves. And so there are mental health habits that we can do too. Learning to sit in that 5 minutes of silence, to focus on gratitude for that 5 minutes. That's a powerful, powerful habit. Or focus on love for that 5 minutes. When I find myself upset with something and wanting to lash out at someone, I have developed the habit over the years that when I find myself wanting to say something ugly, I ask myself a simple question. How will your anger make the situation better? And so far, I haven't found any situation that is made better by my temper. And so that's my question. But I think each individual can find their own question if that's something they want to change. I have a nasty temper. I had a nasty temper. I don't anymore.
Excellent. Well, it sounds like you have an excellent program establishing the habits. What happens, I like how you address, what happens if you don't continue to do it, and how you use your little emojis. I think that's also excellent in your feedback. Do you also play the role of an accountability person for the people that you work with?
Yes, I can. I encourage them to find a peer. And so part of my program in the challenge is to hook them up with somebody. I ask permission when they register for the challenge to share their email address with one other person. And I invite them to connect with each other. And there have been friendships formed across the miles. I currently work with 911 professionals. I had a team that one of them was in Vancouver, Washington, and the other was in Jacksonville, Florida. And they made a connection, and they were both delighted to have that connection. It's virtual. I don't know that they'll ever, especially in COVID time, it's hard to imagine that they'll ever get to meet each other. But that's gratifying. And I encourage people to keep the connections going. It's good to have a witness, someone who stands at the sidelines and cheers you on and cares when you fall down, but doesn't judge you for it. One of the things, if somebody is not doing their habit, one of the things I teach is that we don't give advice. We don't try to help them figure out what they need to do differently. We trust that they know their own lives, and we trust that they can do it. And we really just witness, I see you trying. That's a powerful thing.
Right. Acknowledgement.
Yeah.
Before we go, I want you, if you would, tell me one other experience that you have seen people get gratitude out of, or make a change or change a habit. One of the best ones that you've had so far.
But one of the best ones, it's almost tangential to habits, but we have habits that are not necessarily daily physical habits, but habits of thought. And one of my staff members, when I was chaplain, he was frustrated with himself because he had been going to college, I think it was 5 years, it might have been 6, and he still hadn't graduated. And it was costing him a lot. He was trying to pay for his tuition as he went, which I think was very healthy. But he felt like he was never going to finish. And so we were able to talk about it, and I was able to listen to him. And what we figured out is that he didn't have a why. He didn't have an end goal in mind. And so one of the things that we did was work on, I think it was 3 weeks, that he wrote down every day just one different reason why he wanted to finish school, or one goal that he wanted to reach through finishing college. And he graduated. And so that's pretty powerful. It wasn't a long-term intervention, but it was something to help his mind shift, because he was feeling like a failure, to know that he could. He just needed his why. He just needed an end goal. Sometimes it's easier to reach a goal if it's pulling you than if you're pushing toward it.
Excellent. So, Edie, I am so happy that I've had a chance to hook up with you, learn a little bit more about you, your business, where you came from, what you're now doing, and where you're going to. Thank you for taking time out to visit with me today.
Thank you, Steve. I appreciate it. Have an amazing day.